You think you know yourself. You say your name and it feels solid, like a stone dropped into the river of your mind. You walk through your days believing you are one thing, a person with preferences, opinions, memories. You call that me. But the truth is quieter. The truth hides in the spaces between your thoughts, in the pause before you speak, in the way your chest tightens when someone mirrors a part of you you'd rather not see. There is another presence within you, silent, watchful, patient. It doesn't shout, it waits. It has followed you since childhood, collecting every feeling you weren't allowed to feel. Every impulse you said was too much. Every truth you swallowed to stay loved. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of the soul that you pushed away so you could survive being seen. And though you've built your life around being good, being kind, being in control, the shadow remembers everything you buried to earn your belonging. It remembers the anger you disguised as politeness, the envy you turned into judgment, the wildness you traded for safety. It remembers you. You can lock the door, you can light the incense, you can whisper your affirmations into the mirror, but the shadow will still stand just behind your reflection, waiting for the moment your guard slips, and it can breathe again. Because the shadow doesn't die when you reject it. It grows stronger in silence. It watches through your eyes when you look at the people you can't stand. It speaks through your voice when you say, "I could never be like them." You've seen it, haven't you? That magnetic pull toward the people who unsettle you, the friend who drains you, the partner who mirrors your wounds, the stranger whose confidence feels like an accusation. It's as if life keeps handing you the same mirror until you finally stop turning away. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Maybe what we call fate is just the choreography of our own unfinished lessons. Maybe every person you fear is simply your shadow, wearing someone else's face, trying to come home. And so the question becomes, not who are they, but what part of me is trying to speak through them? We spend our lives trying to outrun the darkness within us, but what if the darkness isn't chasing us at all? What if it's guiding us, pulling us back to what we abandoned so we can finally become whole? You see, this isn't a story about good and evil. This is a story about wholeness, about the sacred act of turning toward what we fear and discovering that it was never meant to destroy us, only to reveal us. Because the moment you stop running from your shadow, you realize it was never a monster in the dark. It was the light you buried there, waiting patiently for you to remember that even your darkness is divine. Listen, can you hear it? That low hum beneath your thoughts, the one that stirs when you're alone, when the world finally stops demanding who you should be. That's your shadow, speaking. It doesn't use words. It moves through feeling, through tension in your chest, through the jealousy you deny, the shame you disguise with a smile. It speaks in the people who irritate you, in the situations that keep repeating, in the whispers of déjà vu that say, "You've been here before." The shadow is the keeper of all you've refused to claim. It's the dark twin of your light, not evil, not broken, simply unseen. When you said, "I'm not angry," it picked up your anger and carried it for you. When you said, "I don't need anyone," it gathered your longing and hid it behind pride. When you said, "I'm fine," it took your grief into its arms and rocked it to sleep. You made a deal with it long ago. You stay hidden, and I'll stay loved. And so it obeyed, faithfully, painfully, completely. But here's the secret Jung understood. What we repress doesn't disappear. It transforms. What we deny in ourselves finds a way to live, in our dreams, in our slips of the tongue, in the people we meet who seem to embody what we most resist. The shadow doesn't hate you. It loves you enough to haunt you. It will appear in your enemies, in your rivals, in your lovers, until you finally turn and say, "I see you." Everyone carries a shadow, Jung wrote, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The shadow becomes dangerous not because it exists, but because we pretend it doesn't. The more you exile it, the more power it gathers in silence, until one day it erupts. In rage you can't explain, in choices you swear aren't like you, in a life that keeps looping around the same wound. You think you've been cursed with repetition, but really you've been offered redemption. Because the shadow will not rest until you listen. It will break your patterns, wreck your comfort, shatter your illusions, not to punish you, but to return you to yourself. There's a line between who you think you are and who you truly are, and the shadow lives on that line, guarding the gate. To cross it, you must bow to the parts of yourself you swore you'd never become. You must face the versions of you that you abandoned in pursuit of being loved. Only then can you meet the whole of who you are. The shadow isn't darkness, it's depth. It's where your creativity sleeps, where your passion hides, where your true voice has been waiting beneath the noise. So listen again. That pulse inside your chest isn't fear, it's memory. The memory of everything you once were, everything you still are, and everything you could become if only you'd stop pretending you're just the light. Because even light is born from the dark. Even stars are carved out of night. And the shadow, your shadow, has been waiting, not to destroy you, but to make you whole. Look closely. Life has a strange way of holding up mirrors, not in glass, but in people. They arrive without warning, a stranger's glance that pierces something old in you. A friend who always knows how to press your buttons. A lover who pulls you in with equal parts gravity and chaos. And before you realize it, you're repeating a story you swore you'd already outgrown. Why them? Why this person, this feeling, this familiar ache? Because what you do not face within you will meet without. Because what you refuse to see in yourself, you will find in someone else's eyes. Carl Jung called this projection. It's how the unconscious reveals itself, by painting your inner world onto the faces around you. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And isn't that the cruel, sacred truth? The people who disturb you most are often the ones who carry your disowned light. They're mirrors, distorted, yes, but holy. They reflect what your conscious mind denies, and your shadow recognizes instantly. You recoil from the arrogant one, but part of you longs for that unapologetic confidence. You condemn the manipulative one, but maybe you too learned to twist your truth to survive love that was conditional. You envy the fearless one, but beneath your envy lies a forgotten courage that's been waiting for permission to breathe. The world is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Every conflict, every irritation, every heartbreak is a letter from your unconscious, written in someone else's handwriting. You can keep tearing up the letters, but they'll keep being sent. Different faces, same message. There is something in you that still wants to be seen. Have you noticed the patterns? The same type of lover, the same argument, the same wound in different disguises. That's not coincidence. That's curriculum. Your soul keeps enrolling you in the same class until you finally understand the lesson, not to punish you, but to liberate you from the repetition of your own denial. The people who hurt you are not always villains. Sometimes they are sacred mirrors, breaking the glass of your illusion so you can finally see what's been hiding behind it. The truth is, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. You attract what is unresolved, unfinished, unhealed. You attract what your shadow still whispers about in the dark. Every person you fear is an unlit candle of your own being, and the flame of awareness is the only thing that can set it free. So when the next mirror arrives, and it will, pause. Don't run. Don't point. Look. Ask yourself, quietly, what is this person showing me about myself? What part of me trembles in their presence? What quality in them feels like a wound in me? And if you can answer honestly, you'll feel the shift. That trembling isn't fear anymore. It's recognition. It's your unconscious rising to the surface, ready to come home. The world is full of mirrors, but the bravest thing you'll ever do is stop breaking them and start looking into them. There comes a moment, quiet, devastating, holy, when running no longer works, when the old patterns lose their disguise and every mask begins to feel too tight against your skin. You reach a breaking point, but it's not destruction. It's invitation. Because wholeness never begins in comfort. It begins in collapse. The shadow waits for that moment, the crack in your certainty, the softening of your control. Only then can it speak. And when it does, it will not speak in words, but in ache. In the loneliness you keep pretending doesn't hurt, in the guilt that never seems to fade, in the anger that erupts and leaves you shaking afterward. That's not failure. That's emergence. That's your repressed truth fighting its way to the surface, begging to be held. Not fixed, not silenced, just held. You see, transformation doesn't come from light alone. It comes from the courage to stand in your darkness without turning away, to look your wounds in the eye and say, "You can stay. I will not abandon you again." Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And he was right. Because awareness burns. It strips away illusion. It dismantles the stories that kept you safe. It forces you to see the role you've played in your own suffering. But that pain is sacred. It's birth pain. It's the cracking open of a deeper self, the one you silenced to survive. You begin to notice how your defenses dissolve, how your empathy expands, how you no longer need to prove, to please, to perform, because you've started to make peace with the parts of you you used to punish. This is the descent Jung spoke of, the journey into the unconscious, the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. The lead is your shadow, heavy, dark, unyielding. The gold is consciousness, radiant, compassionate, whole. The transformation isn't about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you've always been, before shame told you otherwise. Slowly, you start to reclaim what was exiled. You take back your anger and find it was never rage. It was boundary. You take back your jealousy and find it was never poison. It was longing to create. You take back your sadness and find it was never weakness. It was love that had nowhere to go. The descent into wholeness is not about perfection. It's about intimacy with your humanity. It's realizing that healing isn't about becoming light. It's about learning how to hold your darkness with tenderness. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this part of me?" and start asking, "What does this part of me need?" And that's when everything shifts. the monsters under your bed stop growling, because they realize you've stopped trying to kill them. The ghosts in your past stop haunting, because you've finally turned on the light. You begin to see that your wounds were never proof of your brokenness. They were doorways, each scar a map back to the places in you that were waiting to be loved. And the shadow, the one you feared, the one you fought, the one you called enemy, bows its head and whispers, "You finally remembered me." This is what transformation truly means, not to become someone new, but to gather the forgotten pieces of who you are and say, "You are mine." You always have been, because when you stop running from the dark, you realize it's been leading you toward the light all along. And then, one day you wake up. Not in a different room, not in a different life, but in a different self. The world hasn't changed. The same streets, the same faces, the same mirrors. But you are no longer split. Where once there was war inside you, now there is a kind of quiet. A quiet that isn't emptiness, but spaciousness. A quiet that feels like home. You've walked through the underworld of your own psyche. You've met the ghosts, the monsters, the abandoned children hiding in the corners of your heart. You didn't kill them. You didn't cage them. You held them. And in your arms, they stopped screaming. This is integration. It is not erasing your darkness. It is learning to walk with it, to dance with it, to let it breathe without letting it rule you. You stop projecting. You stop attracting only what you fear, because you have made peace with the parts of yourself that were doing the attracting. Now, when you see someone angry, you don't flinch. You feel your own anger resting, not as a weapon, but as a boundary. Now, when you meet arrogance, you feel the echo of your own confidence, steady and unashamed. Now, when you encounter chaos, you know where your own wildness sleeps, and you bow to it without losing your center. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Light without darkness is fantasy. Darkness without light is despair. But when the two hold hands inside you, you become whole." Integration is wholeness. Wholeness is freedom. Freedom is the end of fear. You don't stop being human. You don't stop feeling pain. But you stop mistaking your pain for punishment. You stop mistaking your triggers for enemies. You stop mistaking your shadow for a curse. You begin to see that every person, every moment, even the ones you thought were your undoing, was a guide, leading you back to the mirror beneath the skin, where your light and darkness have always been waiting to recognize each other. And when they do, when the mirror is whole again, you feel it, a deep, cellular knowing. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were only divided, and the division was never your fault. It was the cost of survival, but now survival has given way to truth, and truth has given way to life. And so, finally, you stop running from your shadow. You stop trying to escape. You simply stand there, light and dark, wound and healing, fallible and infinite. And you say, "I am all of it. I am whole." And in that moment, everything that once terrified you becomes a door. Every mirror becomes a window. Every shadow becomes a guide. Because the day you turn toward what you fear most is the day your soul stops running and starts remembering who it really is. There comes a moment after the storm, a silence so complete it feels alive, not empty, but full. Full of everything you once called lost, full of yourself. This is not the silence of avoidance. It is the silence after truth, the kind that hums through your bones and whispers, "You made it." The world looks the same, but now it shimmers. Every sound, every shadow, every face on the street carries a kind of sacredness. Because now you see it, the thread that runs through everything. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You ask, "What is this showing me?" You no longer demand, "How do I fix this?" You ask, "How can I listen?" You've stopped trying to become. You've started to be. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." You've spent years chasing light, only to discover it was never somewhere else. It was waiting beneath your fear, buried under the rubble of your resistance. Now you walk differently, not lighter, but truer, not above your pain, but within it, as if you finally understand that even pain has purpose. You meet people where they are because you've met yourself where you are. You forgive not because it's noble, but because you no longer want to carry what isn't yours. And you love, not to fill a void, but because you finally know that the void itself was sacred. This is awakening. The moment you realize there was never anything to fix, only something to remember. That what you were searching for in others was simply the reflection of what's been waiting inside you since the beginning. You have become both the mirror and the light, the student and the lesson, the seeker and the found. And maybe, just maybe, this is what all your suffering was trying to tell you. That you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. That every descent was leading you here, to this moment of stillness, this moment of truth, this quiet knowing that you have returned home to yourself. And if you listen closely, you might hear it, the faint echo of your own soul whispering, "Welcome back." And then, after all the descent, after the mirrors and the darkness, after the remembering, you return. Not as who you were, but as who you've always been. The world greets you the same, but you move differently now. Your steps are slower, your gaze softer, your presence quieter. Yet it carries the weight of everything you've seen inside yourself. You no longer reach for meaning in the distance. You find it in the smallest things, the way sunlight bends through a window, the tremor in someone's voice when they speak their truth, the fragile beauty of a moment that doesn't ask to last forever. This is embodiment, when wisdom stops being an idea and starts becoming a way of being. You start to notice how your words land, how your silence comforts, how your eyes no longer judge, but understand. Because you've walked through judgment, you've met its roots, and you've found compassion underneath. The shadow still walks beside you, but now as an ally, not an adversary. When it whispers, you listen. When it rises, you breathe. You no longer exile it, you thank it for its honesty. This is what it means to live awake, to carry your darkness like a lantern, to move through the world with the steady humility of someone who has met both heaven and hell and found both inside their own heart. Carl Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You've done that. And now, life opens itself to you, not as a test, but as a canvas. You become a quiet revolution, not because you seek to change others, but because your very presence invites them to remember themselves. You walk into rooms and people feel safer without knowing why. You listen differently. You love differently. You speak from somewhere deeper, somewhere real. And when someone breaks, you no longer rush to fix them. You sit beside them in the dark, because you remember what it's like to think you're unworthy of light. And in your stillness, they remember too. This is the return. The integration of the integration. The proof that awakening was never about escape. It was about embodiment.